is being recorded, and hopefully we will be able to post it to the website so you guys can reference back to it if you need it. And two, as we go along in this webinar, if you have questions or comments or concerns, will you pop them up in the question box, and I'll kind of address them as we go throughout this webinar. So let's look at today's agenda. So first, a little introduction. Our focus is going to be on Compass, which is our state reporting system where we collect our data for students, staff, and parents. And so those are going to be our three focuses of the day. So we'll talk about students, how to add and inactivate those. We'll talk about staff, adding those and providing services. We'll talk about parents, adding those and doing their services. Plus, we will talk about reports of how we can pull the reports for total days, gender, grade level, and race, ethnicity, so then that way we can have that information for our tactile group, which is our federal reporting system. So before I begin, I promised I would have a knock-knock joke, so to kind of get my jitters out of there. Knock, knock. And since nobody can answer, I'll answer for you. Who's there? Canoe. Canoe who? Canoe help me with my data collection? Okay, I'm just imagining that everybody laughed and it was a great joke. Okay, so rolling along here. These three sections of students, staff, and parents will be how we collect our data information for the statewide objectives. So our three objectives, we focus on parent and family engagement, academic achievement, and social emotional wellness, which is our professional development. So first off, in looking at Compass, we're going to talk about adding students. So when you log into Compass, you'll see your home page will look like this, and up at the top, instead of grantee, it'll have you. And then you'll have all these sections. And then right over there where I circled, you click on New Student. And this is how you would enroll a new student. And then when you click on that, a screen like this will pop up. Okay, and a lot of people have asked me what is required on this student demographic pop-up page. So required information is the first name, the last name, the EDU ID number, and make sure that EDU ID number is their state number and not their school district number. So each student should have two different numbers. One will be the number that at the state level is tracked, and then one will be an individual student or a district level tracking. So those, okay, the school that they're associated with, which is on the right side, and that'll be a drop-down menu, and it should only allow your schools that you serve. So with the schools that are in your centers and your programs, those should be the only ones that are allowable. And then gender, date of birth, race and ethnicity, grade, and then the start date. So those are the things that we need to be able to track to report to Tactile Group. Okay, and in adding students, I know that this can be quite cumbersome, of going through all of our individual students and doing that. And I know for some of our, especially for some of our larger programs that are serving, 200, 400 students, this is a lot of work. So one thing that I might be looking at in the future is providing an Excel form at the beginning of the year, and you guys fill in that first part, so you have those yellow boxes. You fill in those. So primarily I would need the start date, which that start date would be when that student first participated in the program. So if they came the first day of program, that would be their start date. But if they started in November 15th, that's their start date. So the start date is the very first day that they attend program. Okay, and then last name, first name, EDU ID number. And then what I will do, what I'm thinking about if we can make this work, is submit the Excel sheet that you send me to our IC portal here at the State Department, and then sending it to Urban, who's with Compass, and then Urban would upload all those, and so you would already have your student demographics there. Now, of course, with that, there's some hit and miss here. Is one, we would kind of have to prolong that first month and a half of doing attendance, and that's okay. As long as you're tracking it in your programs either on paper or an Excel sheet, that's okay. But know that you'd have to go back in and enter in that attendance. And then two, throughout the year, as you know, a few students enroll, disenroll in the programs, you would have to manually do those few. But hopefully this could give you an opportunity to get the bulk out of the way, where it's like, oh, the first initial 150 kids, we could track all of their demographics and just upload it automatically. And then as the year goes throughout, you might have, you know, 1 this week, 3 a different week, and so forth. So, and then another thing is inactivating students. So if a student drops the program, or as it rolls over from one year to the next, you might see, oh, this student didn't come back this year. And so what you would need to do is inactivate that student. So on your home screen, you know, which is that same screen that I showed you, there'll be all the students' names, and there'll be a little drop-down section next to their student ID name, or next to their name. It's a little blue arrow. You click on that, and then you'll click on that second edit button, as you can see on my screenshot. And then it'll pop up like this. And so what you'll see is for each student, there'll be the years that they attended the program. So we can see 2 years here. So one, they were enrolled in 2014-15, which was last year, and now they're enrolled in 2015-16. So you're going to click on that date, or you're going to click on that edit, and then it'll pop up another thing that will allow you to inactivate the student. So enter in the end date. So you can see right under that black box, you'll click the end date, and you'll do inactive. And so once that student is inactive, he or she no longer appears on any active list. So when you do reports for just active people, they won't show up. Or when you're doing attendance, you know, ideally you would just be entering attendance for those students that are active in our program, that were there. So you wouldn't have to filter through all those ones that are not active. Now, at this point, an end reason is not required. You know, we don't need to know why the student dropped the program, but I will give a heads up that in the future, it might be interesting just so we can see why are students leaving our program. You know, and that would mostly be for our benefit, or your guys' benefit, of looking, okay, what do we need to do different? Why are students dropping the program? Is it just because they move, or is it because they don't find it enjoyable? Are we removing students? You know, so forth, whatever the excuse may be. And then, so looking back real quick, so that's how you inactivate students. And I would highly recommend inactivating students as it comes along. You know, even if a student drops the program, maybe they drop in November and then they come back in March, I would probably drop that student for that time frame, so then that way they don't come up on all my attendance sheets, and then reactivate them when they came back. Same thing, and that's very important for, like, if you have like migrant students where you know, oh, this migrant student is not going to come back for this chunk of time. So once you reactivate them, all that information will pop back up. And so even though the end reason is not required at this current time, you're more than welcome to go ahead and enter in that reason. I mean, that's perfect. If you guys want to do that, but it's not required. the other thing is for students of last year, so 2014-15, you do not need to worry about inactivating those students. So it's already rolled, everything's already rolled over, and so right now you would just be focusing on this year's group, making sure that you have the students that are currently in your program to activate and activate them. And so if you do, like I said, if you do need to reactivate a student, you would just do it in the same way. So one thing real quick before I jump onto the next section is talking about students, is I just wanted to show that right now, so if we look at student demographics, right now there's a couple of sections that we do track, which are down here on the bottom left underneath that grade, underneath the grade that's circled. There's IEP, LEP, and then over there on that right side, free and reduced lunch. So those are things that we track, so special needs, limited English proficiency, and free and reduced lunch rating. However, at this time, a lot of those types of student demographics, student information, is a lot more secure, a lot more private, and so we need to figure out a way that we can retract that information, because ideally we should not have access to free and reduced lunch rates of individual students. So here's what I would recommend, unless if your district has provided you access with this information, but usually what I do is I create an Excel sheet of here's my students, and then I give that to food service, and I say out of these students I need an aggregate number of free and reduced lunch participants. And then so they would come back and they'd say, oh, you have X amount of free and reduced lunch, and then that's it. And that would be the number that I would report. And then same thing for, so the other side I would give to my federal programs director and say, oh, I need for limited English proficiency and IEP, who is on this list, and just take an aggregate number. Now, looking in the future, there might be an opportunity where I would upload that information and Compass would show it out in a report as an aggregate number, but you wouldn't be able to see the individual student of who's free, who's reduced, who's LEP, and who's IEP. So that's why on this section I don't have it on here, and on this Excel sheet I do not have that on there yet as well, just because that's very sensitive information and I need to see how we can go forward about collecting that for individual students. Okay, so the next section is after you get your students enrolled, you move on to student services. Okay, so, oh, I didn't give instructions. So to get to student services, this is what it looks like. Let me switch my screen real quick. Okay, so when you're on your home page, on your right side you'll see student services, the third one down underneath students. And so you click on student services and then it will pull up this screen. Okay, so when you look at it, the first thing is the service category. So you will click before and after school, unless you are a kindergarten program. So if all you serve is kindergarten students or pre-K, that's all. So 100% pre-K or kindergarten, then you would do this one, a pre-K kindergarten. But everybody else, before or after school. And to answer the question, so if you serve K through 5, and so you do have kindergartners in your program, but you also serve elementary students, you'll put it in this before or after school. So you click before or after school, service name, attendance, every single time, just put attendance. Okay, in hours, you'll put 1. And so right now, what Compass does is Compass's hours track like days. And so that's why we're putting 1. So then that way it's not like, oh, if I put 2 hours there, it'll show up as 2 days. And this will be something that Irvin and I work with to get this changed, that we can have this hours, say days, and then we might create another little tab right here that'll track hours. So we can break that out. And then you would do the date, so whatever, so today's date. And then down here, you would have your students that will pop up. And so they'll all come as unassigned. And what you'll do is you'll click on the individual name, and then you'll send it down, and then they'll be assigned. And over here, it'll say how many students were selected. So if you had 100% attendance that day, you would click this double arrow and send everybody down, and that would be all of your students. So looking at this, this would be a reason why it's important to inactivate your students, because your unassigned list could get very long. And I know looking at this unassigned, assigned scenario right here is not the most user-friendly for our programs in terms of tracking attendance. And so again, that'll be something that I will be working with Urban to see what kind of changes we can make to do that, to either just have a checkbox and so forth. And also, I won't be changing anything this year because I don't want to change something mid-year and have mass chaos of the system looks completely different. So moving forward, in terms of next year, there might be something, it might look a little different that's a little more user-friendly to us, and of course, that's a little more in sync with our tactile reporting. Now that we've seen what that system looks like, we might be able to tailor it a little bit to make it fit our needs. Okay, so let me switch back over. All right, so just like I said, and the big things to take away from here is to remember that the service name is attendance. Every time, just put in attendance. And the hours is 1. Okay, so the next section is adding your instructors or staff. So the other thing that we do is we track the amount of staff that participate in professional development and trainings, and especially for the statewide objective, that extra 1 social emotional wellness professional development. And so that's where this will be entered, and we will see that. So on your home page, under instructor or staff, you'll click Add View Instructor or Staff. And then what will pop up is this required information. And so it'll say instructor ID. So for the instructor ID, Compass has this set up so that way they can attach it to somebody just like an EDU ID number. However, we don't need any ID number, so we don't need the instructor ID number. So you can just make up your own system and go from there. And then, however, you cannot duplicate numbers. So like if you're like, oh, I'm going to be real creative, and my instructor ID number is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, most likely somebody's already beat you to the punch, and those numbers have already been taken. So you can create any number system that you want. You can probably even use letters. And then first name, last name, what school they're affiliated with, and then a start date. So when were they hired? And again, if they were hired in September, you can put September. If they were hired today, February 9th, you can put February 9th. Okay, so that is how we add instructors. And the other thing is right now we are focused on, so in terms of adding instructors and staff, we're focused on those that are primarily involved in the program. So if you have volunteers that are working quite frequently in the programs with students, this would also be something to consider for instructor and staff. They're attending, a professional development, things like that as well. So to add the services, so on your home page under instructor staff, you click instructor staff services. And so these services is how we're going to verify the state social emotional wellness objective. So at the end of the year for your APR, for your annual performance report, we will look at this, we'll pull this report for your individual program and verify that if you served the professional development, you had those staff members attend and so forth. And I'll show you how those reports look in just a minute. So, the other thing is looking at adding an instructor or staff. In terms of school, if you oversee more than one center, you can just put yourself wherever you want. Just put yourself in one school, and that suffices. Okay, so you click there. So what'll pop up is a service category, staff development. That's the only option. And service name. For the service name, you can put whatever the focus was. I would recommend that if this is your social emotional wellness professional development, then somewhere in that service name you emphasize that. So either in parentheses you put SEL, which stands for social emotional wellness, or you put it right in the title of, social emotional wellness professional development. Okay. Then hours, how long was this training? So if it's an initial staff orientation or staff training, how long was it? And then the date, when was it? And so similar to the student services, you will take unassigned staff members and you will assign them over. And so you just click on your staff member that attended, and then you send it over, and then you save it. Okay, and so that's how you add an instructor service. The next section is adding parents. So this one is a little trickier, and this is how we will measure our statewide objective of family and parent engagement. Okay, so on your home screen, you have that little blue arrow, the same arrow that you use to inactivate your students. And you'll have a list of little tabs of categories. You'll see demographics, parents, academics, testing, school history, GPA, services. So what you will do is you'll click on the Parents tab, and then when you see that, it'll bring up a little page that looks like this. And you'll click on New Parent, or you'll click on Edit to assign existing parent. So if this is the first time you're putting that parent into the system, you'll click on New Parent. But if you have a parent that's already attached to a student and now they have a sibling that you're adding, you'll click Edit to assign existing parent. Okay? So then when you look at it, so adding a new parent, all we need is the first name, last name. So you put in the first name, last name, click OK. Boom. No problem. Okay? And then you'll click, so you'll look, if you're going to add an existing parent, what it'll do is it'll pop up this screen. You would look at your school, and then right there, there'll be the parent name. You'll find that parent name, and then click Assign, and bam. It'll assign to that existing student. So then that way, if you have parents with multiple kids in your program, you'll only need to add their service one time, and they'll go across those 2 or 3 or 10 kids, however many they have in your program. Okay, so Parent Services is on your home page under Parents. You click Parent Services. And again, like I said, this is how we're going to verify our state and family parent involvement. So it looks very similar to our student services and our staff services. What'll pop up is service category, parent education, that's your only option, and then service title, what is the class? You know, so if you did financial literacy is your class title. If you did Love and Logic, there it is. If you taught parents how to use technology with their students, you can say technology class. So whatever the class is. And for services, we are only tracking classes. So at this point right now, that's what our statewide objective is geared towards, is classes and not events. And so right now we'll only be entering in classes. There may be a time in the future where I'll have a drop down and you can select if it's a class or an event. But again, for us, we won't report on events because the direction is moving more towards that parent education class that has that specific learning objective for the parent. Okay, then you'll put in how many hours the class lasted and then the date of when it was. And then down below you would have that same drop-down screen of unassigned or assigned, and then you save it. So staff and parent services shouldn't be too cumbersome because they're not an everyday event, you know, that it's so infrequent that we have them that it shouldn't be too bad. The student services, you know, that's going to be that nitty-gritty daily attendance. You're going to have to get on there weekly or daily to enter that in. So, and again, if you have multiple dates for your class, you can, so if you're doing like a 3-part series of Love and Logic, you can say Love and Logic Part 1, here's the date. Love and Logic Part 2, here's the date. Love and Logic Part 3, here's the date. Or you can just name it the same exact thing. There's no reason why you can't just say Love and Logic, Love and Logic, Love and Logic, and then just create those different dates there. So whichever way you feel comfortable doing is fine by me. That's a song. Okay, so now moving on to reports. So the reason I wanted to focus on this today is because this is going to help us in our next year's tactile group when we report for that fall term. Of course, assuming that tactile group stays the same and they do make us report for fall and spring, here's how we would do this. So on your home screen, on the right side, there's reports and analysis, and you would click New Student Report. Okay, and then so up at the top, you would fill in the drop downs of your grantee. So grantee, American Falls, round, whatever round, and then if you want to look at a specific center, you can do it by center. Or if you just wanted to do your whole program, leave that one blank. Okay, so then the next thing is student status. Click all for student status because you want to see all those that are active and are inactive throughout that whole year. Okay, and then you'll go down underneath reports. You'll do service detail reports. And then the report type will be total days. Okay, and then what will happen is on the right side, you'll get a pop-up that'll look like this, and it'll say student services by total days. So service category, either before or after school or pre-K kindergarten, depending on, you know, how you enroll. So if you're an all-day, if you're a kindergarten program, you would enter in that kindergarten category. If you're anybody else, you'll enter in before or after school. Okay, service dates. So do September 1st to January 31st, 2015. Okay, and again, that's what was established for our fall term based on our previous attendance report. And so that way it's from September to the end of January. And then you would click that green button and pull report. And then what will happen is, it'll pull up a report that'll have all the students' names and then the number of days that they attended. And let me see if I have an example of it. Okay, and then the days that they attended. And then I will be working again with Compass in the future, hopefully to get it where we can track the date ranges, so it's 30 to 59, 60 to 89, 90 plus, to give us an aggregate number, so then that way we can just drop it to Tactile Group and not have to add it up ourselves. But at least this would give us, how many individual students fell each time, how many times they attended each time. So that's for total days. The next thing is is for our demographics report. And so similar, our fill-in drop-downs, you just do your grantee year-round, and then if you want to do it by center, you click what center you want, or if you're looking to pull a report for your entire program, you leave that one blank. Okay, and then student status, you would do all. Okay, and then the student, so for the reports, you would click student summary report, and then you would click the report type that you want, whether you want gender, grade level, race, ethnicity. And now these ones will give you, if you run it this way, it'll give you the aggregate number. So it'll say gender, X amount male, X amount female, X amount unknown, if there's any that haven't been reported in there. And then same thing for grade level, it'll say, X amount 3rd grade, X amount 4th grade, X amount 5th grade, and so forth. And then same thing for race, ethnicity. So that would cover, that first part of the participation that's on Tactile Group. And then the previous one that I showed, our attendance, would cover that other section of our participation. One thing I made a quick mistake on these service dates. That's January 31st, 2016, not 2015. Okay. Oh, and so here's what the report would look like. So if we looked at it, on the left side is a student report by gender. And so it would say, here's X amount of females, here's X amount of males, and then here's those that are unknown for a total number of students. Okay, and then over on the right side would be by grade level. And so it's, here's grade level 1, here's, and so forth, and then here's how many students are coming from that grade level. So hopefully these two reports would save some time of when you get onto Tactile, you can just pull that report and then, yep, that's how many I have, drop it, drop it. Okay, and so here's a little trickiness that we're in with Tactile Group and Compass. So under the understanding that, we didn't know what Tactile Group was going to look like, and so a lot of the Compass stuff reflects how we report stuff from school districts. And so race, ethnicity, I know that there's been a question of ethnicity comes up as either Hispanic or non-Hispanic, and then there's a separate section for race, which is white, black or African American, all those other categories, Asian, Hawaiian, Indian Pacific. And so anyway, and it's separated out between those two, and that's how school districts usually report that information. However, Tactile Group does not report it that way. They count ethnicity and race as one whole thing. So in the future, that might be something that we look at changing, but here's what I would look at going forward is, one, all the students, so if you pull a ethnicity report, all those students that are Hispanic, Latino, that's the number we report to Tactile Group. And then you do it by race, and then you would pull all the other all the other races and add it up to make 130. And now, so one thing to note here is that race ethnicity either comes up unknown because the ethnicity is Hispanic, so the race side comes up as unknown, or it comes up as white, because in the school district systems, a lot of times they'll put ethnicity, Hispanic, race, white. And so that's why you would have a large amount of unknowns in white student or white population. So if this comes up, it's a little tricky, and hopefully I can figure this out a little bit more. But ideally, you would just take that Hispanic number first, take all of your races, and then looking at the unknown in white and minus whatever's left over to make whatever your number. So in this category, in this report, we're looking at a total of 130. So to make 130, this is what it would look like. There's 59 white race students in the program. Okay, so that's pretty much it in the basic form of Compass, of how to look at students, how to add those services, staff, how to add our staff and add those services, and parental or parents and how to add them and add those services. And again, like I said, those three are based around our statewide objectives, and that's how we're going to start looking at whether or not the statewide objective was met. Well, and of course, ISAT IRI scores will also be on here in terms of outcomes, but that won't be anything on your guys' end. That'll be something Urban and I work out to pull that number up. And so I'm going to go through, and I got a couple of minutes. Whoop. And let me check out what our questions are. And so if you have questions, you're more than welcome to ask them. So what EDU ID numbers do we use for homeschool youth? I have no clue. I'll have to look into that one. That'll be something that I note in, and we'll go from there and we'll see. That might be one of those where if you're serving homeschool students who do not have EDU ID numbers, you would have to find out those demographics and enter those students in. But like I said, I can find out and check that out. Okay. Oh, another thing is I will create this this presentation. I will turn it into a PDF, and I will send it out to you guys, so that way you guys can reference back to it if you would like. And I'm also recording it, and so then that way we can upload it to the website, and underneath trainings we can put it in there, and you guys can watch it if you want to go back through and do it. And even if you have, so the question asked is what do we do if we have 2 centers for service names? Do we still put attendance? The answer is yes. All of our services will be attendance, no matter how many centers we have, because that service is how we'll search and pull those reports, and so it'll just help to keep it even across all the playing fields. And so somebody asked do we need to add a service for parent night for summer program? And moving, so based from July 1st, so in the 2015-16 year, the answer will be, or no, based on September 1st, let me make sure that I got my dates right. Oh yeah. Yeah, so if you had summer program last year, then that would be, you would put your parent event on, you would upload that to Compass as well. And so summer program, that is where we allow, the objective is one event where it doesn't necessarily have to be a class. Okay, and let me go back through a little bit. Somebody had a question about they're not able to see how to add those parents, and so I think it might be easier for me to kind of step through that to show where it would work out. So when you're on your home, when you're on your home page, just 1 second. So when you're on your home page, you'd click this little blue tab, and then you'd click Parents, and you do not have to click in the range of family income. That is not something that we track. And then you would click either here, New Parent, or Edit Parent. And so you'd go New Parent, and then you would just enter in whatever that parent's name is. And so the way to go off of this name is 1. I would do it based off of our sign-in sheets from the class that you host. So it's like, oh, you should be keeping some type of sign-in log. And so if Frank comes, that's when I'm going to assign him as the parent. Okay, and then do the last name and then click OK. So, and then if Frank has 2 students in there, I'm not going to save this. Then you would go here, you would find the student or the parent name, and then you would click Assign. And then it'll assign that. And then you'd click New. Okay, let me see. Let me do a quick check. Can everybody raise their hand if they hear me okay? I mean, are you looking at the any question sign? All right. Perfect. Okay, let me just go through some of these to make sure that I didn't miss any of the questions. So, and the other thing was, so somebody asked, what if your teacher is affiliated with more than one center? So likewise, just as you are affiliated with more than one center, you can just choose one school and put them in that one school. Ideally, with that, I'm mostly going to be looking at the program level of this instructor is tied into this grant or this program, and so that's where I'm going to look at it to meet that statewide objective. So I'm not so picky about what school they're in, especially if they're in multiple schools, so you can just choose one. Okay, and so if there So the other thing is that somebody asked about entering in LEP 504 IEP free and reduced lunch ratings, if they should enter that into the system. At this point, no. I don't want us to enter in that information if we have it until I get a more formal okay that it's okay that we put that information into Compass, and we'll go from there. Okay, that looks like all of our questions related to this webinar. So if nobody has any other questions, you guys are free to go and have a wonderful day. And